India's never really been high on my wish list for places to ride motorcycles, but my buddy Bear at Old Bike Barn did a trip last year into the Himalayas, and he was such an evangelist about it that when the invite came up for this trip, I had to go for it. The idea was to ride into Myanmar from India, but there's a bunch of civil unrest over a currency change that India implemented late last year, so that made it difficult. We couldn't get visas approved to cross that border. The guys at Himalayan Heroes and Bear came up with a plan B that included headhunters, elephants, crossing Sela Pass at almost 14,000 feet, and it seemed like a good idea to me. It took about 32 hours of flying to get to Dibrugarh from Los Angeles. Once I landed, I got picked up by the guys from Himalayan Heroes, and the adventure was on. The bikes were really sturdy Royal Enfields, single cylinder, either 350 or 500 classics, and one 410 Himalaya. They're a really simple, stout, vintage style machine that put up with a ton of abuse. We absolutely beat these things to death over all kinds of terrain, off-road, rutted roads, water crossings, icy mountain passes, and we didn't really have any problems with them at all. A couple of mufflers fell off, a loose wire here and there, but otherwise these hardy little machines really kicked ass. These bikes might be considered small by American standards, but for India, they were just fine. Day one, we rode from Dibrugarh into Nagaland and to the village of Mon. From Mon the next day, we rode to Longwa, which is right on the Myanmar border. We would never have been able to do this without our guides. These border crossings between states require negotiating with the army and police and paperwork, and if India loves one thing, it's bureaucracy. Once in Longwa, we got a tour of the king's house, which was neat. He's set up right on the Myanmar border. We met up with a local family for lunch and explored the village in search of one of the last remaining headhunters in the area. One of the highlights of this day for me was in the house where we ate lunch. In one smoky little corner, there was an older guy working on a rifle, and he was repairing it by hand. This one was just a fix, but he does build complete weapons from scratch using really basic tools like a file and a small forge. After lunch and a little soccer practice with some of the local kids, one of our guides located the headhunter's house and we walked down to meet him. No one knows his real age, but he's estimated to be in his 80s. Story has it that he took 5 heads from a neighboring village, though his necklace shows only 4. I'm not sure what's up with that, but he definitely took some. For each head he brought back to his village, the more face tattoos he could get. And the only people that can get these face tattoos are ones who have taken heads. So you can look at this guy's face and tell that he's the real deal. The reason behind taking the heads really isn't some spiritual enlightenment thing. It's really just for status. It made this guy look like a badass in his village, which of course he was. It was definitely wild to be in the presence of such a gnarly dude. The next day we headed to Karazinga National Park area through some really dense traffic. This is where I decided there were several rules to driving in India. 1, start with the smallest vehicle possible. 2, cram as many bodies into that vehicle as you can. 3, drive as fast as you possibly can. 4, fit as many of those vehicles with tons of people or cargo going as fast as they can into the smallest space possible. And 5, and maybe most importantly, use your horn at all times. Early the next morning, we headed to the Karazinga National Park. This park has done a lot for conservation and has helped bring back the Bengal tiger and is home to some of the last remaining single-horned rhinos in the world. I thought we would just get to see some elephants, but we actually got to ride them. Elephants have been used for centuries as working animals in India, and I sure hope these gentle giants are treated decently. Riding these guys through the grasslands was something I'll never forget. We got to see such a wide variety of wildlife right as the sun was coming up and the mist was on top of the grass, and it was really just an awesome day. From Karazinga, we headed to Kalakting village. This was a long day riding with really dense traffic, and we pulled in well after dark. Being a Buddhist town, it had a friendlier vibe than some of the other places we had visited. We walked around, did some shopping, ended up hanging out at a fire pit with some locals who were celebrating a soccer victory, and just had a great time soaking up the local flavor. From Kalakting, we headed north about 270 to the village of Tuang on the borders of Bhutan and Tibet. To get to Tuang, we had to cross over the Sela Pass, which tops out at 13,700 feet. I was a little worried about the cold, but we all had good gear, and we got lucky and caught a sunny day. There was definitely some ice in the shady spots, but it was mostly clear, a little muddy, Definitely plenty of opposing traffic and was a little dangerous, but it wasn't that bad. At almost 14,000 feet, the bike struggled a little bit, but they started easily and just ran with a little less power. We didn't have to rejet or do anything to the carbs. Once in Tawang, we settled in for a 0 day and enjoyed a little rest and time off the bikes. Luckily for us, there was a festival in town and we got to go to the monastery and witness it firsthand. I'm kind of surprised we were allowed into the prayer room and stuff, but it was really cool to see it from the inside. The next day we headed back over the pass to Durang and started to wind down and process what we'd done over the last week or so. Another day of riding brought us out of the mountains and back into the dense traffic. We spent the last night in tents at Canary Park and headed to Guwahati for the flights the next day. In the end, this trip was totally worth the discomfort of 30+ hours of travel each direction, mountains of paperwork, and considerable cost. There's no way we could have seen everything we did without our guides from Himalayan Heroes. These guys allowed us to have fun, ride fast, and do our own thing, but they were always there when we needed them for navigation or dealing with the border bureaucracy. So huge thanks to Booty, Madi, Kim, Rex, and everybody on the crew.